Hello, hello. What's going on, collective listeners? Appreciate you guys hopping on for another episode of the Samson Strength Coach Collective. Today we have Chula Loomis, assistant strength and conditioning coach with football at FAU. Chula and I go back a little bit, back when he was 22 years old. We actually crossed paths, and he's got a great story. And honestly, this whole podcast itself was really interesting. He provides a ton of insight. He's traveled. He's been at some of the highest levels of football that you can imagine. And obviously now he's with FAU and trying to make it happen. So he gives a ton of insight, and great perspective on, especially for younger listeners, on how to navigate this field, how to do things well. And he brings a great sort of outlook on how you want to approach things, not even just like at your younger years, but as you transition through the actual strength and conditioning field itself. And it's really good perspective. So I'll let you guys handle that, let you get into it, have some fun, and enjoy the podcast. What's going on, collective listeners? Welcome back to another episode of the Samson Strength Coach Collective Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Grasso. As you know, today we are joined by Chula Loomis, who is the assistant strength and conditioning coach for football with FAU. How you doing today, brother? Welcome, Chula. Appreciate you hopping on. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself. And then as for the listeners, also, like I said in previous podcasts, I like to talk to people who I've never truly met before. Chula and I have crossed paths before, but I've never actually met him, and at least not more than virtually. So yeah. Chula, welcome, brother. Appreciate you hopping on. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and let the people know who you are.
Appreciate you, man. First off, thank you for having me on, and I'll touch on how we cross paths.
yeah, I'm gonna get burned on that. I was like hoping, I'm like, dude, I hope he's like raw and honest, because like I'm like, I got some thoughts on like how we had to cross paths too, and I'm like, we'll cover that for sure when you get to that part of the story.
Come up. For sure, it was good. So, obviously, appreciate the intro. Down here at FAU right now, I've been in strength and conditioning, sports performance for the past 5 years. It's been for me. So I went to Springfield College, where I did my undergrad, played football, D3 University, Western Mass. I wanted to originally go to PT school, got hurt in high school. The rehab setting was attractive to me as a young person, a lot apart because of the money that it seemed like it was shown. And then as you get older, you learn about insurance and the way that things go and everything like that. And then as I got deeper into the craft, like that kind of went away, just as like being a PTA and seeing some things a lot slower. It's a lot less hands-on. I still kind of, maybe would like to try to combine the strength and conditioning and the PT, but starting in college. So went to Springfield. I was a sports bio major. Did a couple of internships while I was there. Did one at BU, and then I did one in the private sector. Both were super helpful to kind of help me figure things out. When I graduated, I applied to PT school, didn't get in, and I was like, all right, let me turn towards strength and conditioning. I had a friend of mine who played lacrosse, who put me on with my boss up north at the first place I worked at in the private sector. That was Compete Strength and Conditioning up in Norwood, Mass. I spent, it was about 10, 11 months there from when I graduated till that next March. And then that was 2018. So 2019, a mentor of mine linked me up with the director of strength and conditioning with the Vikings that year. So I spent the year with them, 2019, off season, in season. And then from there, so that's actually where we met. So let's give the tidbit on that. I interviewed with you guys at UConn while I was there. And this is actually something that, when I talked to people about that interview and kind of like how transparent you were after, like I still talk to Matt King every now and again. He's been on, but very rarely do people call people back. And like Anthony called me back and was like, hey, we enjoyed you, but you did this wrong, like fix this stuff and you're going to be just fine, which was really refreshing and like some good info to get back. So I don't think I've ever thanked you for that. So thank you. And I appreciated that.
Dude, I'm so surprised that was your take on it. Like I'm not even kidding. Like for the listeners, like this is like a legitimately like a raw first time ever, like that Chula and I have ever discussed this, because after that, obviously like you had to go and, go your route and go do whatever you had to do, you know what I mean, to move on. So we never really kind of like touched base on that, but yeah, dude, I'm so glad that was your take, because in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh man, he's going to roast me on this podcast, but I got to have him on though. Cause like, fair is fair. So I'm thinking like, he's probably gonna be like, yeah, man, you came on, you give me some bullshit ass answers to like why I didn't get the job and all that kind of stuff. Cause I did that because like, and credit to Matt King, like he always kept like interview like pools, like low, right? Like, you know what I mean? Not a ton of people, right? And it was like, you narrow it down, and you obviously were in that like final stage or whatever. And I was always like, dude, these people are in a final stage. Like every one of them should get a call. Like, why not? You know what I mean? So, and I think that like, I got that from some, like, I definitely did that. Like I did something on an interview. I think it was, you know, funny enough, the reason I didn't get a GA spot once was because dude was like, hey, tell me about Anthony Grasso, not the strength coach, just like the person. And I legit like paused because I was like you said at the time, like, bro, I don't know, like, I don't do anything else. I'm like, it was like spring break, and I was like just sitting in the weight room, everyone's gone, and I'm like, dang man, like that was kind of eye opening to me. But the dude called me, he called me back, he told me what I did wrong, and kind of, and to be honest with you, like, just so you know, like in my mind, the reason why I was wondering, I'm like, he might just come on here and be like, yeah, man, you give me some like bullshit answers, because at that time, like I kind of had to like search for reasons why we didn't want to hire, because you did a bang up job. Like you did an awesome job, obviously. You know what I mean? So, and you know how it goes in college football, man. There's always some like political nonsense. If I'm being completely honest, it's like, oh, like, you know, this is why we need to take this guy instead of this guy, all that nonsense. So I was like, I kind of had to like come up with reasons. That's why I was kind of like, dang, like I might have to just like, I guess I got a nitpick, right? You know what I mean? And I remember like one of the reasons or whatever was something about like a book name or some shit like that. I'm like, dude, like, what are we talking about here, bro? Like, what are we doing? You know? So I'm glad that was your take. Sorry to cut you off, but yeah, no, I'm glad that was your take. And whether or not the reasons were valid or not, like honestly, your career is probably 10 times better off the fact that you didn't get that job anyway. You know what I mean? So you know, everything happens for a reason. So yeah, no, keep it rolling though. My bad.
Yeah, that was huge. That was big. It's just a 22-year-old getting feedback. Biggest thing.
Oh, you were 22. Yeah, you're young. Dang.
So,
how old are you now?
26. I turned 26 the day I got down here.
That was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh,
wow. So from there, so we had played, it was the playoff game that we had that year. So we played the 49ers. And then I had gotten in contact with, he was at UMass. He just left. He's now the director of sports science at Stanford, Joel Reinhardt. He was actually a coach of mine when I was in undergrad. But he hits me up. He was good friends with Coach DeMarco, and he put me on with Coach DeMarco. And then I spent the COVID year, so 2020, which was an interesting year just because it was like short numbers of training. Teams were all different. I didn't see football while I was down there. I was there from, you know, February of 2020 till Thanksgiving, which was a short stint, you know, but obviously had some of my own teams. You know, it was a great experience. I learned a ton from being on that staff. Those are, you know, some great friends, great mentors, and some great people that, you know, I still stay in touch with. So I'm going through my deal. So I was there till Thanksgiving, left Thanksgiving 2020, went back up north to the private sector spot that I had my first job at, because stayed in tight with them, obviously, and they're you know, they do a great job up there. It's a real lacrosse hotbed, but growing a bunch of different sports. So I got to go home and be the football director of performance there, and then help out with a lot of the other things that we had our hands on, and that was awesome. And then I want to say March or April, another one of my mentors, he's still with the Vikings. He's the assistant director of performance there. Hit me up, asked me if I would be interested in a job down here with Joey and FAU, and you know, let's see if we can make that happen. And you know, it landed, and then we got down here at the end of April, and we've been rolling since.
Dang. Yeah, it's an incredible opportunity, dude. And I've heard, I don't know, I've never talked to Joey, but I've heard like everyone who talks about him is like nothing but good things, right? Like, is that kind of, I'm assuming that's kind of been your experience?
Absolutely. Leads from the front. I mean, pushes the staff in terms of how to operate and the continuing education side. So it's been huge for all aspects of growth. You should have him on the podcast. I don't know if you've taken recommendations on the back.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, I you know, and like, to be honest, I'm starting to get more comfortable with like literally just hitting dudes up on like Instagram or like emailing them. You know what I mean? And like, I try to like make it so that I have like some sort of connection. You know what I mean? But sometimes it's like, you just don't, but you want to talk to the dude, you know? So it's like, I might just like hit him up. Well, now I'll be like, hey, I just had Chula on, you know what I mean? Maybe.
Yeah. It probably looks like you're using me to get to him, but it's fine.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what I'm doing. And I'm going to tell him to him like, hey, listen, you know, the reason I had Chula on, I really needed to get to you, bro. Like I needed to get you on. No, but yeah, no, I that's awesome, dude. Like I've heard nothing but good things about him and like the program he runs, obviously. And I think I know like a couple people who have worked for him and then obviously moved on to like other spots who aren't there now or whatever, who are just like same thing though. Like you talk to him like, dude, I had a great time under him. Like I learned so much. Like I was able to really open up my eyes to different things. And not just from like a technical perspective, but like also from like, you know, you said leading from the front and actually like creating connections with the people you're working with and stuff. So Yeah, so it's I mean, I don't know how deep into like what you guys are doing now you want to get into. Obviously, in the middle of the season, obviously there's definitely some things that you want to probably keep, close to the hip or whatever. But yeah, like what are some of, like, if you want to just talk about like some of the 2 or 3 like main things that you're really enjoying right now, you know what I mean? Kind of like diving into that you feel really good about and you're excited about at this point in your career. What would those things be for you right now at FAU?
I mean, definitely level of growth. We're involved with a lot, involved in practice, which is awesome to see. Uh, I think we got a really good group of guys. I'm excited to get into conference play. Honestly,
Yeah.
we're I think we're going to make some things shake, which I'm really excited about. Um, but in terms of, so you thinking more the training side of things right now, or you kind of you
Yeah,
went
no,
back?
it could be. It could, like, if you want to talk training, we can go training. You know what I mean? It's up to you. I was really thinking more along the lines of just like things that like you personally feel really good about, like in terms of like what you're able to pick up on and grow. And it could be something training wise, obviously, like philosophies and methods and maybe ways about implementing those methods that you feel good about. But maybe just like a couple things that you feel like, hey, like I've picked up on this in terms of just like, I don't know, ways to communicate with players, relationships, things that like I've learned from just like watching Joey or whatever, that I feel like, well, this will transcend the way you're going to kind of like approach the rest of your career. I guess that makes sense. If that makes sense.
For sure. Yeah. I think that, not that we baby athletes, but I think that athletes are capable of a lot more sometimes than
Yeah.
we not give them credit for, but
Yeah.
necessarily. We put together a really hard summer. Joey put together a really hard summer. Um, I think the guys definitely came out of that ready to play some football this fall. Uh,
Nice.
I personally, being in the private sector, it's different. So I come from the private sector down here, and I'm speaking specifically in terms of like the loaded jump to Olympic lift kind of debate that everywhere right now.
Hmm.
Uh, if you asked me maybe a year ago, I probably would have sided more with loaded jumps, unless in the private sector it was like if you got kids who are going to go to a specific program and the strength coach, or that within their program they're going to have to do certain things.
Yeah.
Sure, teach it, coach it up, everything. I had no problems with that. But for the masses and with how many moving parts there were in some of those places, it was like we can get what we need to from loaded jumps.
Sure.
Uh, I think that the way Joey teaches things, how concise, how direct, and then how demanding, while not being like, oh, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
gets the message across, and then puts athletes in positions to be successful. Like
Hmm.
I forget what the number was at the end of the summer that we had for over 300 pound cleaners. But that's something that can be taught in a week or two. Um, and I felt good about it before. I feel great about it now.
Yeah.
Anybody can do it, within reason. Obviously, you're going to program for the right tool for the right job, right athlete, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Within the speed stuff, field stuff, understanding, how much time really we have to produce force, to move, to put yourself in positions to be successful. They put timestamps on a bunch of football actions and figured out, they graphed it all up. I believe it was the staff that was here before. So it was Joey, Tyler Henry, who's at Tennessee, Coach Jake Beckett, who I didn't get to work with, who's at Washington State. And I'm sure there's a couple other guys that are missing, but I know that they went, and they broke down the game, and essentially most actions happen under 500 milliseconds. So in understanding that, marrying that up with the emphasis you put on decel, which we've been going through things, books, articles, and there's it's like 3 times more force that's associated with deceleration than acceleration. So
Oh,
like,
okay.
yes, right? Isn't that crazy? So
Yeah.
we're looking at, like, there's an article, we're looking at a soccer player who was dealing with, like, it was like 6 or 7 times either more force or times body weight, the force that he was dealing with when he decels. And
Yeah.
that's probably, 180-pound soccer player. And then we started to think and talk like, okay, like we have a receiver who's 205 and is breaking 100 times at speed. Like we
Yeah.
should probably make sure that athletes not only have the skill, but have the ability to withstand the stuff that they're doing with that stuff. So,
Yeah.
uh, decel, change direction, all that stuff, making sure that's happening in a timely manner, making sure that force is produced in the right time. I didn't have VMAX in the private sector, or excuse me, VMAX I'm talking about VBT, so I'm going fast here. Uh,
Yeah.
but time and bar speed and all that good stuff. And so I'd put an emphasis on bar speed and make sure that different things I was doing, like that's not fast enough, take weight off, or I need you to, being very specific in the way that the details, right? But we have everything we need here. And it was a seamless integration for me in terms of using those units, just because like already believed in it. It already made, you know what I mean? It was already something
Yeah.
with, but to see the prescriptions with the load and the speed and everything kind of put a bow on it and help me really, really grasp that, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And then I think the last thing with speed specifically is, again, in the private sector, different athletes, a bunch of different things. Wickets are commonly like, you see it and you're like, okay, like I should do that, but like I don't know how to normalize it across
Yeah.
different athletes, different speeds, all that good
Yeah.
stuff. And he's got a system that he built out that's based off speed that touches everybody, covers everybody. So that's another
Really.
thing that could be definitely
Yeah.
with and run with.
Yeah, that's always difficult to do, right? And like when you're talking wickets, and for those who aren't familiar with wickets, obviously, talking about just like any sort of barrier. Obviously, most of the time people use like flipped over hurdles or whatever the case is, or people. I think they actually make like some sort of mechanism like specifically for wicket drills now. But like I think what we were doing, and we just use like actual like mini hurdles and stuff like that. Is that kind of what you guys are using for the wickets, or do you have another? Yeah, so like I think I would imagine it's pretty difficult when you're trying to figure out like stride lengths and things like that. Is that kind of like where like the individualization comes in, where it's like, yeah, it's really tough to like implement something like this across like a larger team, because it's like everyone's going to kind of be operating in different ways, So is that kind of like the system that you guys have come up with is a little bit easier to make it happen for like position wide kind of thing?
Based off speed. So,
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, right, if it's the wrong length, you're either going to get somebody reaching or you're going to mess the cycle up and it's going to be too fast. They're not going to get through the full range of motion, so it takes away like the efficiency of how much power you can produce and everything there. So
yeah. And I want to go back to one thing you said to highlight it before we move on. And we don't have to spend too much time on it, but I thought it was really important where you said when you're working in the private sector, it was like, well, we need to just take a look at where these kids are going, what programs they were going to be entering, and we need to prepare them for that. And I think like that was something that I thought was a little underrated when I first learned that when I was working in the private sector, because I worked in the private sector for the first like 6 years of my coaching career, because I had a kind of a similar setup to you where I started in the private sector, right? And then kind of was like, all right, like probably gonna move into some collegiate stuff. But like, we were like, okay, we'll get these like kids, like, hey, we're gonna go off to college, and it's like, here's what my collegiate strength is gonna demand of me. And it's like, all right, like we may not be doing a ton of like cleans or anything like that, but we're gonna teach like the technical emphasis of it because of the fact that we know you're gonna be required to do it when you go to school. So it's like, what kind of a coach am I if I'm not like preparing you for what you're gonna have to like use in your preparation to then get to the, you know what I mean? It's like, I just did a podcast before. It was like, we were talking about, I was talking to this dude who's like an engineer, and he's like, yeah, bro, like I spend a lot of time like building machines that like build like machines that build tools. And I'm like, wait, what? And he was like, yeah, like I make the machine that can like then make a machine that's going to like make a tool for somebody to use and stuff. And I'm like, oh, damn, like that's crazy. Like that's so far away from like the end game, right? Like to like break that down, you know what I mean? Like you're like so deep in there, right? And it's like, that's kind of how I feel like when you're working in the private sector, because it's like, you're going to create something so that they can then go on to, that collegiate strength coach who's then going to like create them, which is going to pass them off to the, practices and obviously the games and all that kind of stuff. So not necessarily a direct correlation there, but you know what I mean? You kind of get what I'm saying there. It's like, that's kind of how I viewed it. You're like far away, but you're like kind of close. It's very meaningful at the same time. So I do want to highlight that like a lot of private sector strength coaches, like I get it, like you have your beliefs and I understand, and I know you mean well, but I do think that like if you aren't already just thinking about like, hey, like this athlete is going to have to clean. I don't clean in my program a lot, but he's going to have to clean when he or she's going to have to clean when they go off to college in a year. So it's like, why not just prepare them for that, right? As opposed to like, you being like, no, man, I'm not an Olympic guy. I don't do Olympic lifts. Yeah, it's like,
regardless of wherever you're at, whatever sector, whatever level, it's about service. And if you're not like taking that lens of like, how am I setting you up for success for when you leave me? Then what do you
like basically like around like the concepts of like, all right, like at some point it's like I'm providing like an experience, and I'm providing like a as a servant leader, right? It's like I'm providing experience that I know that I shouldn't expect anything in return. I should just be able to just provide you with that experience and then expect that you're going to be able to take that and then pass it on and live a better life because of it, So kind of like going with that, right? Like kind of getting, is that kind of like something that you've progressed with a little bit over your career? Has it kind of like changed a little bit the way you view like what you do and how you do, because it's difficult. Like, let's be honest, like, despite the fact that you're operating at a high level, I would imagine, Chula, that you would categorize your journey as a tough one, right? Like you've had to move around a lot. You've had to make things work, right? There's highs and lows, right? As being a strength coach, like how have you kind of like navigated that, like mentally get to point? It's like, where you're still able to just like wake up, know what you got to get done, and it may not always be pretty, but it's like I'm gonna continue moving along this path. Like, how do you create that like peace in your mind to get to that point where you can just stay in the game? You know what I mean? That's a loaded question. I don't know. I'm sorry, bro. That came out of nowhere. That's a loaded question, but
we're good. Bring the storm on. We already got one here.
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it starts with being lucky to still be around the game. You can't play coach, right? So, love being around the game that I love so much growing up, high school, college. Fortunate to have a job, but fortunate to have a job that I enjoy with people that I like being around. I always laugh that I get a free gym membership wherever I get to go.
It's the best.
So, but good people. I've been lucky with cool locations. So you talk about moving around, but like from Boston, I got to live in Minnesota for a year, which people laugh at for the cold and whatnot. But 7-8 months out the year, it's real nice. It's just once it snows in September, it's there till May.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, Carolina and Boca. So, I mean, yeah, the biggest thing is trying to be grateful for the people who I've had some great mentors and, have been allowed to be in some great rooms with people who are, much better than myself, because obviously you don't want to be the smartest guy, all that good stuff, right? You want to put yourself in great rooms. So definitely believe in the rule of 5, try to put myself around good people. But, the biggest thing has been, I mean, this is something that, obviously we enjoy helping people get better, at within sports, which has been, pretty much my entire life and something that I've enjoyed. So it hasn't been too difficult. I mean, moving around is what it is, and it comes with it, especially as a young coach. And obviously, I told you earlier, 26. So part of that was expected a little bit, and I don't really have anything that's stopping me from being able to be mobile. So as long as I can be mobile, see different things and enjoy different things and people and places, I'm all for it.
Yeah, for sure. And then obviously, like you said, you have the ability to be mobile. So like your family understands like, hey, this is a dream that I'm chasing. Obviously, whether it be like, girlfriend, or whether you've got like family members that are like, you're like, hey, this is what I'm trying to get after. So like and you've obviously received some support in that regard as well. They kind of understand how it goes.
Yeah, across the board, it's been pretty understanding, which has been awesome.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it could be tough. Yeah. It could be tough. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so as far as like, you being, 26 now, right, versus, 22 when we initially crossed paths, and then obviously even earlier than that, if there's young strength coaches listening to this, obviously, like, what are some things that you might be able to provide them, since you're kind of like fresh off of that, right? Like you're kind of like, hey, like you made it, right? Like you're in the game now, right? But it was like at that time where you're kind of like, man, like, this is tough, like, but I'm hanging in there. You know what I mean? I'm trying to make this thing happen. Like, what kind of like insight would you provide to those young strength coaches who are like kind of probably going through what you were going through, maybe like, I don't know, 19, 21 years old kind of thing?
You always think you know more than you do.
Yeah.
Right? That old saying of, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it always comes back to Coach Pete Rams, who's at Indiana. When I talked to him last time, it's been a little bit, but last time I talked to him, his biggest thing was just being a good dude, which is essentially all it is. You got to be a good human. You got to be a man of character. But, making sure that you understand that there's a lot of things left to learn. There's very few things that are like brand new at this point. There's been a lot of people that have come before us that, have laid some great groundwork for the field and for us to progress as we get going. So it's kind of our job to stay humble, put the best work out that we can, build other people up. Like when you have interns, you have other people younger than you, like your goal is to not just prepare them as an intern for the role that they're in, but prepare them for the next job and for the things to come. And then obviously they're going to be the face of the field. Like we always laugh with our interns, like you might be hiring me at some point, like different things, right? So build them up, like make sure they're confident, make sure they understand their stuff, put them in positions to be successful, just the way that you would want and you had wanted people to do for you. Can't ever think that you made it. I know you said made it, but what is it? You know what I mean? Everybody defines success differently.
Sure.
Coach Joey's got the saying on his wall, I might butcher this, but you don't have everything you want yet, so why are you chilling?
Yeah.
In the game, yes, working at FAU and whatnot, but have not made it, want to see success, want to win this year, want to win the conference this year. Like we got some big goals as a team, and want to make sure that, everything is continuing to trend the right way. Message for the younger strength coaches, keep reading, keep learning, keep trying things, try things on yourself. That N equals one. I took that from Coach DeMarco, but you should be able to try and test anything on yourself just to see how it is. And even if it's not something you're going to use, like try it out for fun, because there could be different spin-offs or different things you want to pull from it.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree. Like, I think it's like when you feel like, I mean, I feel like I've learned this a little bit more. Like, I'm 31 now, and I feel like you get to a point where it's like you start to realize that the same things that you can be vulnerable to in terms of like successes and failures in your early 20s really doesn't change that much when you get into your like 30s and 40s and 50s, right? Like, I feel like no matter what, like life is just this long like journey of just like ups and downs and like battles, right? And it's like the same things that you can be vulnerable to in terms of like failure, like losing your job, like in your early 20s or whatever. And it's like, or maybe in like your mid 20s, you finally start making a salary or whatever. And it's like, you're vulnerable, right? Especially working in college football. I'm not just talking about college football, but like working in college football, obviously, a ton of turnover, lack of job security, all that stuff. But it doesn't change much. Like my dad's like 65 years old and his company's going through layoffs right now, right? And I'm like, dude, imagine getting like potentially laid off at 65 years old. It's like you're almost like at retirement, you know what I mean? And it's like, we like find a new job. What are you gonna do? It's like, yeah, so I think it's like, I think that is a great point, right? So you never like truly like make it. And I think that that's okay. You know what I mean? I think it's okay to like not have like made it, you know what I mean? To like just kind of like always be like in the game and trying to like navigate this game and trying to like provide that, that pull, you know what I mean? Because there's a ton of push and pull throughout this whole thing. So I think that's great insight for the like young interns and like young people coming into the strength and conditioning industry. Kind of like moving along with that though, it's like, what do you feel is different for you now versus then? Like, how has your personality changed a little bit? Has your coaching style changed a little bit? Or do you kind of feel like you're kind of same guy, just maybe a little bit like sharper, maybe a little bit, like you said, I do agree with you. The more you learn, the more you feel like you don't know. And I think that leads to you feeling like you're going backwards sometimes, right? Like I'm like, damn, dude, maybe I'm dumber than I was, or maybe I'm just questioning things more. Like, I don't really know, you know what I mean? But I do think it's like, what is this, dude? Like, why do I feel like I'm going backwards? But yeah, where do you feel like you're at now, like assessing like you now versus you when you first started?
I mean, reps build confidence. And I know that sounds like, all right, you're a strength coach talking about, but I'm talking about like reps, like in the weight room and then people reps.
Yeah.
So in the private sector, we always used to joke about that. People reps, being high energy, working with people, and it might be someone's mom who's just come in and needs help with something. But the more reps you get on both ends of those, obviously, like the same as practice. If you hammer all your reps through the week of practice, when you see that situation or that whatever comes up in the game, you're already ready for it and you can handle it. Within meeting different people, seeing different methods of communication, and stealing like an artist. Like I've definitely taken things from different places and different people as I go. And then that confidence just kind of compiles on itself and then helps you be sharper, helps you handle situations that are new when they do come up. And then, just trying to continue to be a good communicator with everything that comes up. So there's no surprises, whether it's staff to staff, staff to director, or whatever it is, just so that everything gets handled the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, no doubt. And along with that, obviously, like you talk about being, and I think like people reps is a really important term. You know what I mean? Just getting more reps with people, especially in the capacity that you work in with obviously players and trying to like get, establish the trust, right? How has it been? You know what I mean? Trying to like establish that connection with the players that you're working with now at FAU. Is it something that you were always pretty good at, like establishing a connection with players that you work at or work with, or like how has that gone now for you in comparison to years past? Is it going pretty well? They're like really taking a liking to you, and how do you go about doing that personally? If you have like a specific process that you can provide.
Yeah, it's going well down here. Definitely going well down here. Like with any new situation, people have to get to know you first and trust where you're coming from, figure you out, trust the fact that you care before they care what you know. But talking to guys, working with guys, communicating openly, overly, helps to kind of break down those walls and break down those barriers and kind of get the buy-in that you're looking for. So both formal, informal. When I say formal, I mean like formal, like discussions within training on the floor, on the field, things like that. And then the informal stuff of, passing by each other, whether it's in the weight room, in the office, different things like meetings and stuff like that. definitely helped. During camp, I try to go to, a good number of the positional meetings as well, just to get a good wrap on things that they were doing. And I think that helped as well. But,
That's
it's just
awesome. Yeah.
balance. Yeah. And I mean, it's only going to help the strength side get better if we know, and I can speak that language. Not saying that I would or try to coach or anything like that, you know what I mean, during the season. But
Yeah.
if something comes up in, like, say next summer, we're doing a drill and I can reference to a DB that, hey, like, I noticed that when y'all do blah, 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 like, they kind of, especially with a newer guy or someone that maybe you don't have that type of connection with, that can help kind of spur that and put that in a little.
Yeah. Have the coaches been pretty receptive to you doing that? Like the sport coaches, they like that. They like seeing you in there.
Yeah, they're open to it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think, and it's, I asked because I think I actually just heard from one of my buddies. He's talking about like, oh, like, when a coach told him like it's disrespectful to send like catapult data to the coaches because it undermines like the veteran coaches on the staff and all that stuff. I'm like, dude, what are we talking about here? And that's why I love the idea, because that's what I used to do. Like when I was at UConn, like I thought like, all right, we're in camp or whatever. It's like, why not just like be in it, right? Like be in the game, like be with the players, be with the the sport coaches, like establish that connection, try to have dialogue around like, what type of qualities are being touched on in certain drills. Just learn, like even just learning, like there's no problem. Like anybody should be able to ask questions, explore, especially you as like a support staff, right? Because essentially, like you said, like we've already established you're a servant leader, right? You're trying to like provide some sort of service to the athletes, and not just the athletes, but like the sport coaches and the sports medicine staff and everybody else in there. It's like, why not allow that support staff and the people that are in the program to like explore the things that they really are interested in? You're interested in helping the program. So part of that you've decided is learning more about the game and learning more about what the players are going to be exposed to so that you can then go and do your job better. Right. So it's good to see that people are open to that though, because I think that that's a good sign for football, right? Like moving in the right direction and like, hell yeah, like we're like, cohesive now, right? Like they're like, these are like, that's the idea. That's what you want. Right. And I just think it's just funny. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, man, like some of these coaches, it's like, they're so wrapped up in their own ego that they're afraid to say like, hey, I would love your input. You know what I mean? I think it's a sign of like vulnerability, and I see vulnerability as a sign, especially as a leader, of like, this is good, like this is great, like you're asking for my help, that's what I'm here for. You know what I mean? Just kind of like provide a different, you don't have to take my help, but you just ask and it's cool. I'm not going to think any less of you. You know what I mean? And I think like, is that something that you felt in your experience kind of like working in football? Like what is your experience with that? I don't want to like preface it, but like what is your experience with like working with coaches and the dialogue and all that kind of stuff? Like what are your thoughts on that stuff?
Our director of sports science sends out the catapult report every day, and he's been doing that summer. So the guys see it, the coaches see it, and then I know Coach Joey has conversations about it as well and different things like that.
Yeah.
Our whole staff isn't in the staff meetings, but he handles those, and I think it's one. It helped us prepare for the season, because when you think about the load and different things that go on, obviously, I'm sure as you're not just preparing for, all right, we're going to get 5,000 yards on game day. You're going to get volume X amount throughout the week, right? So you got to be not only prepared for Saturday's load, but what does the whole weekly game plan look like? And, our guys coming out of the summer ready for what they're going to see in camp, and all that good stuff there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think so. As far, and how is that like different or more or less the same than what it's been like at other places that you've been? Like, do you feel like it's been easy to establish connection with coaches and they kind of understand your role? Do you think that there's more to be had there? Right. Like my personal take is that like, I think we've even yet to like scratch the surface as far as like what we could be like potentially like put out there as far as a product, not just like in terms of like physical ability. Like I know that like the physicality of like what you see on Saturdays and Sundays in collegiate and like NFL style like setups are like, okay, people will be like, this is unbelievable. And like, it is like, these dudes are capable of incredible things. Right. But imagine like thinking like, hey, like we haven't even yet to like scratch the surface of like having a true understanding of like what it means to be a sport coach, what it means to be a strength coach, like how we can mesh these things. And some people do, you know what I mean? But I know it's not like fully being done yet. Right. So it's like, cause we haven't come to a consensus yet here, like in American sport on like what these qualities mean. Like we haven't come to a consensus on like what these roles are going to represent and all that stuff. But like, is there more, do you feel like there's more to be had there? Like, do you feel like, in your experience, obviously you've worked at some high levels as well. Like, are we closer than I think, or am I, you know what I mean? Am I just like in my basement, like unaware, or like, where do you think we're at with all that?
So, I mean, I can't speak on anywhere I haven't been, and I know there's
Sure.
other stories out there, but the places that I have worked and the people that I have worked around, it's been cohesive,
Mm,
from like the performance side between AT and the S&C side has been pretty cohesive. Uh, and it's been the same for the sport coaches. So
yeah.
unfortunately, I don't have a uh, like tea for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm
It's so, well, it's tough.
sure
Yeah. It's
there's
tough.
places that are still working through some things,
Yeah.
and it can always be better, wherever you are, regardless, as long as you look at and tweak systems. But no, yeah, I feel good about that situation, in the places that I've been, and I've been
Yeah.
fortunate that.
Yeah, and that's good because obviously then you're finding you believe in the system, you believe in the philosophy that you guys have, and so you're going to probably just try to put more out there for FAU, right? Like you're going to do more for the players, you're going to do more for the program. So, um, kind of going with that, where do you kind of see yourself in the next like 5-7 years? Like where's yeah, I'm sure you got these like grand plans and all that kind of stuff, and you could speak like vaguely if you don't want to get too specific, but where does this all end up for you? Like where at least right now, what's the 5 to 7 year plan? I want to like document it like part of these podcasts because I'm like I want to be able to come back to these things and be like, hey, this is what you said you were going to do. Where are you at now? Like good and bad, like not trying to like hold people accountable, and it was just like it's cool how like things change and some things stay the same and some people really accomplish these things. So yeah, where do you see this going?
Um, it's a good question. It's a very good question.
Thanks.
For me, enjoying where I am, knowing obviously there's more work to be done and more improvements. I just, want to make sure that I continue to be in good rooms, um, continue to be around good people and good cultures. So, I definitely want to be around, the highest level of football that I can, and win and excel at that level, and help the players and the team and everybody involved to do so. Um, but specifically like that, I think that's as vague as I'm going to leave it. I
That's fair.
do know I want 2 rental properties by 30. That's the other thing I can give
There
you.
you go. There you
Uh,
go. Yeah.
but you know, as many championships as possible
Yeah.
is the docket. So
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where like I think I've heard before, and it's funny you mentioned like, oh yeah, like be nice to your interns because you might actually like the dude, my supervisor at my current position is actually a dude who used to intern at UConn and like while I was there. So it's like, and I like had it set up, and it's crazy, but it's so true. Like, so for all like football coaches out there who think I'm just like messing around, or it's like they think it's funny to say that, like it could actually happen. You know what I mean? It might not even be in a job that you think you would be. You know what I mean? It could be something totally different. But
yeah,
it's funny when he was interning for, he asked me that same question. I was like, yeah, like, by 31, I want to be like a director at some, like, whatever, a Power Five, or like maybe even like a whatever, like any school, really. You know what I mean? And I want to do like this, and this. And then he was like, well, why don't you focus more on like the qualities that you need to obtain as opposed to like the specific titles and the names of the positions and stuff. And I was like, damn, like that's a really good concept. And like that was kind of where I was like, at the point where I'm like, damn, like what are these qualities that I need to have to get to these jobs? Like I'm working hard, like I'm like learning, like all I want to do is just like immerse myself in it. But what does it actually mean? But I feel like the answer that you just gave isn't really vague at all. Like it's actually what you're supposed to say, right? Like you're just talking about the things that you want to obtain and like the things that you need to do on a daily basis in order to get there. And whatever like there is
yeah,
what it is. Like you'll know, you know what I mean? Like when the time comes, but up until that point, it's like you're just going to handle like what you can handle, you know what I mean? And what you need
100%.
to get done on a daily basis. Yeah. It's
100%.
good. It's
Where
good.
do you
Yeah.
see? How do you answer that question?
Yeah. It's wild now because like everything has changed for me. You know what I mean? Like it went from like, because I am 31 now and I didn't end up becoming a director of strength and conditioning. I made it to like a top assistant, right? And I was kind of like, felt like I was like right there on the doorstep kind of thing, but needed to, now obviously as we talked about before, needed to make a change, for like personal reasons, you know what I mean? I just felt like I wasn't becoming who I wanted to be personally. And so like now it's like the things that I want to accomplish are less like really like even less based on like specific titles, but more so based on like the person I want to become, like a family man, someone who's reliable. It's like when I like describe it, it's like I just use these like adjectives. Like I want to be someone who's like known as like thorough. It's just like someone who could be like, yo, like when the dude spoke, like he was just honest and he was so transparent and I could like trust him. When he said he was going to be there at 5, he was there at 4:55. You know what I mean? Like whatever it was, like I want to be that. And I don't know, like that isn't specific to any career, because I feel like the career is like less, it's not that it's not important to me. Like I'm driven. I just want to be good at whatever I'm doing. And I think like what it is that I'm doing isn't like, I don't know, it's important for sure, because you're gonna be, you need to be doing something you're interested in. And I am, you know what I mean? And I'll continue, I'm sure we'll both continue to do things that we're interested in, obviously, right? Like let's hope. But yeah, it's more so around that stuff. Like, you know, you want to be a father someday, like you want to be, you know what I mean, a good brother, like a good son, you know. And I think like these qualities, what's up?
Wherever you are, be a good one.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's kind of where I'm at now. And that's what I feel like I wasn't getting, like being, you know, where I was working, I was in college football. And it's not because a lot of dudes do it. A lot of dudes make it happen. I just wasn't able to do it. You know what I mean? I wasn't making it happen. Like I wasn't the brother that I wanted to be, the son that I wanted to be. I wasn't like embodying like I really take a lot of pride in my dad. Like I'm like, I always, when I was a little kid, I was like, I want to be like my dad when I grow up. You know what I mean? Just like, dude, he does everything. The dude makes it happen. Most thorough, reliable dude I know. And so, as are like most dads to theirs, right? Like, you know what I mean? That's kind of weird.
Literally just thinking that. So yeah. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, 100%. Right. It's like everyone's gonna say like they got the best dad, because like, you know, like if you're like locked in and you're doing things well and you really have a lot of direction in your life, you probably had a pretty awesome dad. You know what I mean? So it's like, and an awesome mom too. So it's like, you know, that's kind of like where I'm at. I'm like, damn, like, am I somebody that like my dad at the end of the day could just be like, that's my son and I'm proud of that dude. You know what I mean? And so like whatever that is, like that's kind of where I'm at. You know what I mean?
That's a good answer.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I don't think I've gotten hit with any questions on my own podcast before. So this is great. That was awesome.
I planned on. Gotta turn it around sometime.
Yeah, you got to spin it for sure. All right, we got a few minutes left. I don't want to take it too much. I know you got to go lift. You haven't lifted yet today, have you?
Oh yeah, I need to.
All right, okay. I'm gonna let you get your thinking. But yeah, if you want to just kind of like any sort of like closing like thoughts, you know what I mean, on like anything. I mean, it could be things, you know, if you have some thoughts about the industry, about football, things that are just like a little bit more like philosophical, overarching, things that you're really passionate about, that you really want to let the people know about. We could kind of like close with that, and then we'll make sure we give you a little like Instagram plug, you know what I mean, or anything that you know, a little social media plug, any other work that you want to get out there. But yeah, the floor is yours. You get, you know, however long you want to take it, whatever. But any final words to kind of wrap up the podcast, Chula?
Sorry for the pause. I wanted to think for a second.
Take your time.
I think things are going the right way, and the way that the field is seen as more important than the weight room. Obviously, you know, we're going to build some qualities and do some good things to drive performance on the field. But again, this is stolen from Coach Joey, AAB. It's always about ball. So we got to make sure that we're doing everything we can to drive up what happens between those white lines.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. That's awesome. And so, yeah, like what's your Instagram? Where can people find you if people want to reach out to you and ask you any questions or connect with you? You know, what are some, and obviously you don't have to give out that information, but if you want to, yeah, what would that be for the people listening?
Instagram is at C Loomis. So C and then period LOOMIS.
Okay. All right. Awesome stuff, brother. Well, collective listeners, we appreciate you guys listening in. I appreciate Chula, obviously, you hopping on and being flexible, obviously, because I know be safe down there in Florida. Obviously, I know you guys got a lot going on with that storm. But yeah, man, we'll connect soon. It was really good to do this. And I wish you guys the best of luck. I got another team that I got to root for now, follow along. So let's go get it. Let's go. But yeah, man, thanks again, Chula. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much. Keep good work on this deal, man.
I appreciate it. I'll try. All right, listeners, we'll catch you guys soon. Chula, I'll catch you in a little bit, brother.